So today we're going to do essentially a two-part lecture. The first part will be exercise 115. Or, I'm off on my numbers. 215. Sorry, which is essentially everything that you need to know about creating the basics of an environment in V-Ray. So thus far, when we worked with our files, we've always done a basic directional light, white infinite plane, white background, and we just render the objects. It gets to a certain point where obviously we need context. We need background, we need skies, we need sunlight, and all of those kinds of things. So we're going to spend some time understanding what an environment is and what it entails to create it in V-Ray. It's not something in one day that will have the end-all solution and you'll be done. The kind of assigning how this stuff works takes time. It takes practice to really feel comfortable with it. It'll probably take you the rest of the semester. You'll continue getting comfortable with it. But today we're going to start with the basics. We're going to start with the sun and kind of work through it. We already, last class, did your basic design of your skyscraper. And before we get too far into it, we're going to use the skyscraper as a block and bring it into a scene. And I have the scene available for you as well. And you're going to work from that as well as your skyscraper today. So I'm going to go ahead and open up my exercise 214 file, which was my skyscraper. And I want to make sure that before I get too far along with this, that I clean this up. You guys probably have 3 buildings in your file. I want to make sure that I get it nice and clean so that I can use it as that block reference down the road. So I want to look at my layers. I want to look at my building and make sure that it all kind of matches up. I don't have a bunch of extra stuff. Things that are on the layer are correctly assigned to layers. Materials are correctly assigned, all of that sort of thing. If I don't have a clean file when I go to bring it in as a block, it's just going to be problematic down the road. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to double check where my layers fall. I'm going to have a layer, and I'm going to call that layer skyscraper. And I'll start with core, and I'm going to put it as a sublayer of skyscraper. And I want to make sure that all of the core is on the core layer, which it turns out it's not. So I need these shafts as well as the tops here to be on the core layer. So we'll change object layer. And now the cores are, in fact, on their correct layer. The ceilings and the floors are already on their correct layer. So I'll select them both and put them as sublayers of the skyscraper. And I can confirm, yeah, there and there. Yep, those work. I'm going to take my skin and make sure that it's on its own layer, because unfortunately my skin has a bunch of other remnants on it. So we'll take all the pieces of my skin. Oops. There. And I'm going to build a new sublayer called skin. And I'll change that object, or these skins, to be on that skin layer. Perfect. Actually, this top should be probably a ceiling or something. I'm going to make it a floor. Change object layer. Because floor is going to be concrete, so I'll throw a concrete roof on it, essentially. I could make its own roof layer. Let's take this layer here, which was my original skin layer. And I'm going to go ahead and just delete it and delete the objects that are on that layer, which will include the cage. I don't need that anymore. So that's gone away. And I also don't need my infinite plane anymore, and I don't need my old buildings layer. Remember that the sun or the light and the infinite plane, none of that can come in with my file. I want it to be just a clean, simple file. So I'll get rid of my environment layer. I'll get rid of my old buildings layer. And now I end up with just my building itself. Now let's go ahead and take my building, and I'm going to move this so that it's at point 0, 0. And then we'll zoom selected. Oops. There it is. And so now I have my building established. I just want one. So you pick whatever one you like. And now I need to double check my materials. So I'm going to go up to V-Ray, go to my material editor, and I'll look first at the skyscraper glass. If I click preview, I noticed that the glass turns gray. So something's wrong and it didn't load the file correctly. Probably because my drive letter changed when I plugged in my flash drive, which is part of why I caution you to make sure it falls in the same. Things happen for a reason. Obviously, I purposely did this because it'll happen to you guys. So I want to make sure that I reload this material. So all I have to do is right-click on glass and say import material, and then go find my glass material again. So let me go into V-Ray and into glass, and I'll pick the Skyscraper glass. There we go. And now it looks like Skyscraper. I'll check my concrete. Now it may look, when you first select, say, the concrete, it may look like the concrete's there, but if you click on preview, you see that it goes away. And so it's gray, so it will probably work anyway. But let me go ahead and import material, and we'll bring in the concrete as well. There it is. And my textured sheetrock, I actually think will probably work, but I'll bring it in just in case. And that was under, what, walls, I think? No. Interior wall. There we go. Textured sheetrock white. There it is. And it essentially looks the same, but I was bringing it in just in case. Okay, so those three are there. I have to make sure that my materials are applied correctly over here. So it looks like my core does not have concrete applied yet. So I'll right-click and I'll say Apply Material to Layer. And I'll apply it to the core. My skin also is missing the glass. So I will right-click on Glass, Apply Material to Layer, and I'll apply it to my skin. So, okay. So now I have a master layer called Skyscraper with floors, ceilings, core, and skin, all of which have materials applied to them. You have a question, Tyler? Yes. Yes. So we're getting there. Okay. So at this point, I can go ahead and I can switch from shaded mode into rendered mode, and I can take a look at my Skyscraper and or my Skyscraper skin. Now, if you look carefully, you can see that there was a little bit of a mistake in how this ended up working out. These little ribbons were meant as a way of distinguishing little individual panes of windows, and they didn't work out quite the way they were intended to with the transparencies and whatever. So I'm going to go back into my materials. So I'll go to V-Ray, Material Editor. I'm going to look at the Skyscraper. And if I look at it, we should have under Transparency, I'm sorry, there's a map that's been used. And if I were to preview it, there it is with the little bars. And let me try just to invert them and see if this solves the problem. Say OK. And it did nothing. Gotta love it, right? Still did nothing for me. Go back. Which probably means that it's actually in the reflection that doesn't have the map applied to it. That's fine. Sorry, I have to go through and double check here. This one has to be inverted. Once I get it right, I'll go back and show you. Nope, those weren't that. They weren't correct. All right, well, in the interest of not making you sit here and watch me mess with settings, I'm going to go back to where it was. Actually, I'll just reload it. And I'll show you how to texture map it correctly, which will essentially hide what the problem is, and then I'll go back and fix the problem. Let me go ahead and import the material. Sometimes when you start messing with settings, if you get too far down the road, it's easiest to just go back to the original. So I'm replacing with the Skyscraper glass. And now it'll go back to where it was. But let's go ahead and do some texture mapping. So let me select the skin. And so let me just select objects on the skin layer, which gives me all the skin. And then I'm going to go to my properties. I'm going to pick on my texture mapping. Now this building, even though it has swooping sides, is essentially a rectangle. So Box mapping would be my closest mapping. So we'll go ahead and apply a box map with a bounding box, world, and we'll cap it, which also means that this will align all the way across that gap. And let's do x equals y equals z to make sure that it's applied uniformly across my building. And then let's adjust the repetition to maybe, let's try 50, see what happens. And I'll have to select off. Okay, so now you can see that the pattern applies, and it looks like I have more individual little glass panes. Obviously, I have a problem because I'm getting some transparency through that I shouldn't. But when I back out and I do the render, I know that the background is solid, but you won't see those little gaps anymore. Yeah, you probably can't see a thing on there. Anyway, you'll see it when we move it into the other file. So at this point, I've corrected the texture mapping. You can probably see it a little bit better. I have that applied correctly. I have the materials applied correctly. I'm going to go ahead and save my file. So I'll go to File, Save As, and I'll call this Exercise 215 Skyscraper. And let me make sure it's in the 215 folder, and I'll click Save. So the next piece of the puzzle is I need to have a file to bring in the building. And that would be, since this is going to be in San Francisco, I need a file that is San Francisco. And so I have a file that I managed to commandeer from Berkeley studios, their grad studios, a long time ago. So if you open it and it's missing current buildings, no surprise, because it's an old file. I think this is vintage 2006 or 2007, something like that. I did not make it. It's just something that I have access to, and I've since given you access to. So if you go to today's exercise, at the bottom of exercise 215, there's a link to the San Francisco city file. It's at the bottom here. You'll have to click on it. It'll take you to Dropbox. When Dropbox pops up, its little thing, are you sure you want to connect to your Dropbox or whatever, you can say cancel, and then you'll click the download button to be able to download the file. Now, I already downloaded it so that I don't have to wait here for it to download. And I'm going to go ahead and open that up in Rhino. So I'll go to File and then Open, and I'm going to pick my sfdowntown.3dm. Notice the file size is significantly larger than anything we've been working with. This is a big file. 64 megabyte file. It's not uncommon to get these files much larger than that as we start to go forward. So let me go ahead. Come on, open. Gotta love it when stuff doesn't open, right? Let me try double-clicking on it, see if it'll open that way. Here we go. Okay, so if I were to zoom out, remember this is going to be a little on the slow side and a little jumpy. So there's pieces of San Francisco. Certainly we can recognize some pieces, like the Embarcadero buildings are here, the ferry building is here, this is obviously Market Street, right? Some similarity, right? But it is missing a few of the other buildings. Transamerica's there. But I've identified a site. I have no idea if it's even a site anymore. I might have demolished a building to make it, but it's on Market Street, right there. I have set up something, or two layers. One is the San Francisco model. The other is the building site, obviously labeled in blue. This is 100 feet by 200 feet, and will allow your building to sit very nicely on it. Furthermore, I've set up some views. So if you go to Set View, Perspective 1 and Perspective 2 are two views that have been established at ground level looking towards your building. And so you can pick either one of those views to kind of quickly see what your building looks like in the particular scene. So before I even bring in, sorry, I thought I set View, Perspective 2. There we go, there's another view. Before I even bring in my file, I want to spend a little bit of time and get these to look good. and we're going to set up the environments and that sort of thing. So number one, this big file is actually a series of mesh objects. And this is the unfortunate thing of I didn't build it. It's not a NURB surface. I've never translated it into a NURB surface, which is part of why the file is really big. It's made up of triangles. And so we need to kind of work and manipulate all of these individual pieces. So because they're all on their own layer, I can right-click and say Select Objects, which is going to select the whole city as a backdrop, not the building site. Remember, I don't want the building site selected because I want to keep that one independent. So I have the SF model. I'm going to go into my V-Ray materials, and I've already loaded a white porcelain material for you to use as kind of the backdrop. If you want to use a different material, that's fine. For whatever reason, making the city skyline kind of a neutral white, a little bit shiny, seems to work nicely in contrast to your building. So if you want a different look, that's fine. Doing it as a photorealistic city backdrop is not easy. You'd have to be applying materials to all the different buildings, and it's just not worth it. So it's easier to just kind of give it a generic, kind of like if you were building a physical model of it, maybe you'd make your building one color and the rest of it would be just kind of painted white and would go away. That's the idea. So I'm going to apply this material to the layer, the SF model layer. And I'll go ahead and say OK. And I'll take it one step further and apply it to the mesh itself. So let me go ahead and apply to selection as well. And if I leave the mesh the way it is, it doesn't matter whether I apply it to the material or to the layer. But I have something in V-Ray that will speed up Rhino a lot. And it's called a V-Ray Proxy Object. And I always hesitate as to whether I should really emphasize this or not emphasize this, because it can be a complete lifesaver and it can get you into huge trouble. So there's two sides of the coin here. But I like to at least bring it up as an option, particularly when you have a file like this that's just really slow. So you can see I'm trying to move it and it jumps a lot. And when you guys open it, you'll see that it's a very jumpy file because it's so big. So what a proxy object does is it takes all this geometry and it makes it a very special file that only V-Ray can read. And so by doing that, it takes the geometry out of your scene, gives you a simplified version, and when it goes to render, it says, let me go get this referenced file and I'll drop in all of this information later. Which is really nice when you're modeling, because you can essentially get rid of things and strip down your Rhino file, making it easier to model. So if I were to do that, and I'm going to show you how to do this, and I'll show you the disadvantages as we go along. Number one, I have to make sure that my material is already applied before I go and create the proxy object, because you can't go backwards. Number two, when you do this, it's not a reversible operation. So once I make it the proxy object, I can't say, wait a minute, I don't want it to be a proxy object. So I can't make any changes to it. I'm committing to it. It's fixed geometry. So having it as your backdrop is not a bad thing, as long as you know where your building is on the particular site. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and select all of the city model, not my building site. So I'll right-click on City Model and say Select Objects, which gets me the whole mesh. And then I need the V-Ray toolbar to come back. And so let me go ahead to Tools, Toolbar Layout, and let me load up the V-Ray toolbar. I'm sorry, what? You can technically trim it, but we're going to want to be able to take an image looking kind of at our building standing up in the nest of all the rest of the building. So it's not worth it. So let me go ahead and load that toolbar, if I can find it. There is probably a keyboard command for doing this. So at the very end of this top row, there's kind of a tree-looking thing. And we have two options. If we left-click, we can import a proxy object. And if we right-click, we can write a proxy object or create a proxy object. So I'm going to right-click on this tool. And it's going to bring up the Save VR Mesh File dialog box. And so I need to save this onto my flash drive. So we'll save it into exercise 215. And notice that the save as type is a V-Ray mesh files, a .vr mesh. And so we'll call this sf downtown.vrmesh. and I'll go ahead and click Save. And then it brings up this V-Ray Mesh dialog box. So we're going to export all the selected objects as a single mesh file. We want to automatically create the proxies, warn for existing files. That would be I'm overwriting something. And it will automatically set a triangle count for the preview mesh for us, or we can specify the number of triangles that are going to make up the mesh. This is the previewed version. So the only way to really see this is to actually do it, and then it'll make sense when I do it. So right now, I'll leave it as the default, and when I say OK, it's going to take all this dense geometry, and it's going to dramatically simplify it. It's working. This is also not necessarily a fast process either. It's working very hard right now.
So it places your object into the grid without the building?
No, it's taking the mesh that makes up the San Francisco skyline, and it's making a stripped down version for within the Rhino file. And once it's done, it'll make more sense.
Absolutely. I need a copy of my phone.
OK, so obviously it happens to the best of us. So I'm going to stick without the proxy object for right now, and we'll see if I can't pursue that in a little bit. But for the nature of getting you through this, because you don't technically need the proxy object, it won't. I might be able to select different pieces and proxy object them separately. But anyway, for right now, we're just going to ignore that. And I'm going to go into, I'm going to select all my objects. I have to go back and do my material editor, make sure I apply the porcelain white. I'll apply it to the layer, because I'm not going to worry about the proxy object. It'll go on the SF model. There. And remember that I can always turn off the layer. So if things are running too chunky, right, just turn off the background and work on, that's why I put the pad on a separate layer. So now we're going to go ahead and bring in that block. So I'm going to go to File, Edit, Blocks, Insert Block Instance. And I'm going to go browse for my skyscraper. So I called it Exercise 215 Skyscraper. We'll go ahead and say Open. I'll say OK. Now right here, this is what we were talking about. Do you link it, do you embed and link it, or do you embed it? The embed and link is kind of a good generic option, because if you lose the file, it's still there. But if you update your version, it'll still update. If you want to keep your file sizes as small as possible, you go with just link. So in this case, link might not be a bad strategy. But I'm going to go ahead and embed and link, and I'll say OK. And my building will come in. And so there it is. And I'm just going to place it somewhat near my scene. Now, I happen to know, based on the angle, a street, and this was a street. I could confirm by turning back on the site and looking at it. There, I've got a street there, and I've got a street there. And I've got a little bit of extra space around some kind of a plaza or something. So if your building's a little big, it will still probably fit. So I want this building to go on the site. And I'll type Move, and I'll move this corner over to there. Now I need to rotate it to fit, so we'll just do a regular rotate. And I'll rotate this back line here to fall right along the side of the site, something like that. So this helps, having the site there, because it's something that I can put. Now, if we were doing a close-up rendering of the entrance or something, we'd probably have to deal a little bit more and add stairs or whatever. But for the scope of the renderings we're doing, I'm not worried about it. So I now have my building site. Now notice that I have my skyscraper. The materials came in. If I go to my V-Ray material editor, all those materials are there. So everything did what it was supposed to do. That's good. So now it's time to start setting up an environment for this particular scene. So I'm going to create a layer, and I'll call that layer Environment. And underneath that layer, I'll create a sublayer called Sun. And thus far, we've always just picked the directional light as my sun, but we want to actually create a real sun this time. So I want to load up those toolbars again. Obviously, when my computer crashed or Rhino crashed, I lost this. We go to File and then Open, and I'm going to load up that V-Ray toolbar. We'll go ahead and say OK. All right, so on the top row here, notice there's something called sun. That's what I'm going to pick. I'll go ahead and click on the Add a Sunlight System. And that brings up the sun angle calculator. And so by default, it's set on manual control, which is not particularly useful unless you really know what you're doing. I'm going to uncheck manual control, and I'm going to scroll down and look at kind of this map and a list of cities. I want to pick a city that's as close to the city that I'm working with as possible. And so I'm working in San Francisco. So if I start typing San Francisco, lo and behold, San Francisco shows up. Right? Now, you want to try to pick something close. If you're off by a little bit, it's not the end of the world. But technically speaking, we want to be geographically close. When I click on that, right, I don't do anything more than that. But when I scroll back up here, we can see the time of day and the time of year. I'm in the nighttime right now because I'm at like 3 in the morning. So that's not going to do any good for this rendering. I want to move this slider up until it's daytime. And you can actually see the lights on the map change at the bottom as I shift, the time of day. And so I'm going to do kind of mid-morning. We'll do something like 9:30-ish. I can also choose the time of year. I could set it to right now by clicking the Now button. And so you kind of have flexibility. So we're in March at about 9:30 in the morning. If I scroll down here a little bit more, I can choose to have daylight saving time on, which it is right now. So I can choose to have that on or off. All right. Once I'm done with all of this, you can actually see that the sun position has shifted. So this north, south, east, west, if I were to superimpose the x and y axis, the positive y would be going straight up at north, and the positive x would be going out to east. So if I know the orientation of my building, I might be able to choose the time of day based on where I wanted the sun. So I just wanted to point that out, that you could adjust it. Anyway, the options are fine. I'll go ahead and say OK. Now, after I say OK, I still, if I look at the command line, I still have to put the sun in the scene. And a lot of times people forget to actually put the sun in the scene. So I'll go ahead and where the sun goes, just like the directional light doesn't make any difference, I like to put it someplace where I can go back and find it again. And so I could use one of the corners of the building site. I could also use up here at the top of the building, and I could drop that sun in like that. So we can see now that my sun's coming in from the left to the right, kind of shining down on my building, giving me a shadow over here. If I was unhappy with the kind of the look of the sun, I could select the sun, and I could go to Properties, go to Light, and I can click on Modify Sun. And when I do that, the manual control is checked again, so I have to go back through the same process. San Francisco, select it, come back up here. It's daylight savings time, and I want it to be in the afternoon this time. So we'll go maybe 5:30 in the afternoon, and I'll go ahead and say OK. And now my sun is going the opposite direction. Do you get how that kind of works? Okay. So I can always modify the sun. Furthermore, I could have, under layers, I could have sun particular time, another sun at a different time, another sun at a different time to do more of a light study. Something that's available to you if you want. It's a little bit complicated. It might be easier to do one sun and then adjust it by going to the modify. It's kind of which way, it's the lesser of two evils. There's another setting that you'll have to change down the road too. But anyway, so we're going to pick a particular time. I'm actually going to go back, well, we'll leave it as this for right now, as my time of day. So now I have the sun in the scene, which is good. The thing about a sun in V-Ray is it's extraordinarily bright. So we did directional lights, which is kind of generic soft lighting. Sun, if we go outside right now, it's really bright. And so we have to be able to mimic that in V-Ray. And so we do that, but we have to compensate for it in the V-Ray options. So I'm going to click on the O or go to V-Ray options, and I'm going to go to a drawer called Camera. And this is absolutely critical if you're going to get a good rendering, and that is that I have to mimic as if I were shooting this particular rendering through a physical camera. So like I walked outside with my camera and I took a picture, which means I have to expose the scene correctly now. So I'm going to turn on the physical camera, and I'm going to set kind of the only real setting we need to worry about is shutter speed. The higher this number is, the darker the image is going to be. The smaller this number is, the lighter the image is going to be. So this is 1 over, if shutter speed, it's not particularly clear. This is 1 over that number in seconds. So right now this would be a shutter speed of 1/300th of a second. So if I did 1/1000th of a second, it would be a shorter amount of time, and it would be a darker scene. So it takes a little bit of getting used to, but basically the larger this number is, the darker the scene is. The smaller this number is, the lighter the scene is. Yeah.
Can we relate that to actual camera manually to use like 1/50?
Exactly. Right. So you're gonna. It's similar. Is it perfect? Not really, but it's good. I tend to start my renderings at 200. It's a good kind of generic, and then you can adjust from there. Some particular backgrounds, I know that I'll have to bump that value up, but 200 is a good starting place. So physical camera is on, and I set my shutter speed to 200. So those settings are now correct, and that's going to compensate. So at this point, I have my sun, I have my background. If I were to start a rendering, and let me go to my perspective 2, set view, perspective 2, and I'm going to adjust, well, we can kind of see a little bit of the sky over there. Okay? If I were to do this rendering, and let's hope it renders reasonably quickly for me. Obviously, my size at 320 by 240 is really small. I always keep my sizes small, and the resulting image is going to be blurry until I get my settings correct, and I'm happy with them. So it's almost done with its pre-pass. And here's our final pass. Like I said, the edges are going to be blurry because this is a really small one, but I'm just getting a sense for what's working. So I've got some shadows that are falling. That's good. I have some reflections of other buildings off of the glass surface. That's good too. I know it's a little dark for you guys to see. But if I look up here in the sky, my sky is still black. So yes, I have a sun in the scene, but I have nothing for a background. I have no sky color. So I need to go back into my V-Ray options. So I'll click on the O for V-Ray options. And I need to go into the environment drawer. And some of you have already done things with the environment drawer where you've changed the background to be, say, white. Okay? I could change the background to be light blue or something, but it doesn't really mimic what a sky looks like. So we're going to do something today, and then we're going to override this with some more complicated settings next class after spring break. But for right now, we're going to change it a little bit. So we've previously just dealt with colors. We're going to go into the actual environment texture mapping. So it's a lowercase m now. We're going to click on it. It's going to become a capital M. And we're going to go under, instead of none, we'll come down here until we find texsky. And we have under sky, we have something called sun. We need to pick the actual sun that's in the scene. So the sun that's in the scene is represented by a long string of numbers. So this is where I was saying if you have multiple suns, you would have to make adjustments, which can be a little annoying. So I now have that set. I'll go ahead and say OK. I don't have to worry about any of the rest of the things. I will also do for the background the same thing. So we'll switch here to texsky. And under sun, I'll pick that random string. And so what this is doing is it's tying the background lighting and reflection to the position and the intensity of the sun. So the time of day and the position of the sun. So now that I have those two on, if I come back and I render again, you can immediately tell that the scene is different. And if we look up here in the sky, right, you can tell that it's a light blue sky. The further up I look, the darker the sky is going to go. So it's mimicking what the sky looks like. Furthermore, over here, it's at the horizon. If we were to look outside, right, the horizon line tends to be a little bit more white. As we get up higher in the sky, it's going to be more blue. So it's mimicking that same general look. And suddenly, the glass texture that represents the skyscraper, the other buildings, feel a little bit more alive because we no longer have that black background and we no longer have that white background. This is not nearly as good as having clouds in the sky and more advanced environments, but this is certainly a step forward and a step in the right direction. So I'm now getting good reflections off of my building. I have good sky in the background. I'm happy. So now it comes back time to do a few more adjustments. So I'm going to go back into my options, and I'm going to look at my output. So I had my output set really, really tiny. I'm going to change that output to be a little bit larger. And so I'm going to manually set this because I want to be able to include the upper part of my skyscraper a little bit. So I'm going to set this, instead of being in landscape mode, I'm going to set a width of maybe 500 and a height of maybe 2,000. And then I'll go ahead and render. And this will take a little bit longer. But I'm now giving myself a better view of what my overall building looks like. And you can see already the sky goes from white to blue. Right? Much more realistic, much nicer rendering. Okay? So this is also reasonably fast at doing the rendering. There's not too much complexity to how I'm doing this. So I'm not going to overemphasize the network rendering just yet. But since we're here and we're kind of talking about it, I do want to point a few things out. We do, in the labs here at DVC, this lab, 116 and 124, have a setup called network rendering. And what network rendering does is it goes out and it looks for computers that aren't being used or aren't being fully utilized and says, hey, can I borrow some of your computing power so that I can work on a rendering on another computer? And when these computers first start up, you've probably seen this before. There's this weird little box that shows up. Okay? A lot of people immediately close it. If I could hide it and make it run in the background, I would have already done that, but it doesn't work that way. Okay? So when you start working on these computers, now that you know that this is tied to network rendering, don't close it, minimize it. Okay? Just keep it down there. Spread that piece of information to all your friends. I will remind the people in 135 to leave it open. As the semester goes on, the more of these that are open, the better. Okay? But this is also tying together with all 90 computers or so. So there's a lot that are available for you. Let me go ahead and close this for a second. If you want access to the network render, again, this is going relatively fast anyway. But the network render is available under System, Distributed Rendering. I can turn it on, and then I have to go get my hosts. So I already have a number of hosts that I've been using on this system before. I have to check the little boxes and then click on Resolve Servers, and it'll go out and it'll find the little addresses of them, I hope. I can also click on Find Servers. If I do that, it'll tell me, oh, I've found 60 more computers that I can use or whatever. Right? So there are 83 unused spawners on the network. Yes, I'd like to load them up. And then we can come down here in this list, and I could start checking these boxes. You do run the risk of crashing V-Ray if you check too many of these boxes at once and then click Resolve Servers. It just kind of happens. Right? So I'm going to go ahead and say OK for right now. And then I'll come back and do these in little steps. Then click Resolve Servers again. Yeah, I don't know. It's weird. I'm just giving you the cautionary tale. And once I have that on, when I click on Render, it can take a little bit longer when it initially starts the render. And so you can be like, well, wait a minute, this isn't necessarily faster. It speeds up over time. It's not there. This is the preview of the last version. So if I look at my little render progress window, see, this is where it's a little slow in the beginning. The reason that this slowness happens when you first start the network render is your computer is saying, hey, I need these other computers. Can I contact you? They come back and they say, yes, I have some available space. It says, oh, great, let me send you all the files that you need. And it's not just the Rhino file. It's the background images. It's the texture maps. It's all of that stuff. So it's spitting that out to all these 80-something computers. This process takes a little bit of time. Once it gets through that, then it will start to really render fast. So it's a little slow in the beginning before things get started.
So given that towards the end of 221 or whatever, most people are going to be trying to do that same thing, will it have a problem with multiple people trying to use multiple computers?
So when your spawner is working, and we can look at my spawner was working, and somebody hit it with some stuff. So if we look back at time, now this is obviously fully technical information, but it will go out and it'll say, let's come back up to the top. It's waiting for something, and it's probably going to start moving. It's going to say, here it's receiving the scene from this particular computer. As soon as it receives the scene and it's working on that particular scene, it won't accept any connections from anybody else. So it's kind of this weird stacking thing where it takes it and is doing one particular thread, and then when it's done, it releases it and says, are there any other threads that I want? And it starts pulling the threads. It's a first come, first serve. But it works. It ends up working out pretty well. And doesn't look like it's populating particularly well for me right now. But you could get it where I right now have 8 threads working, but I could have 60 threads working on the same time, and it can really dramatically speed up. There we go.
Those 8 threads.
So there you go. See all those boxes? I just had 8 showing. Now I have a bunch more coming in. And so those are as I'm hitting a variety of your computers right now. It's actually, if you're in this room and nobody's really doing anything, there's no noise, you can hear all the fans in the computers kick on when the network render goes, because all the computers ramp up and start spitting out resources. So it's a pretty cool process. And you can, if you follow this along, you can see that it's really starting to cook in terms of all the stuff that's going out and where it's spitting information back and forth. And that's part of the real value and the power, there we go, to doing these network renders. And so you can do a render that is a much larger size than you ever could do without it. And there it's done. Okay? And so now I have where the last one was small, if I were to zoom in, I have a pretty decently high resolution version of this building. Okay? And so there's probably little issues that I need to adjust. Obviously on my screen it looks better than what it looks like up there. But the point is that you can enable the network render. Today, probably not necessary. A render might take you, with the network render, it might take you, 2 minutes, and without it, it might take you 5 or 6. But we're going in the direction where, with the network render, it might take you 5 minutes, and without it, it might take you 30 minutes or an hour. So we're going in the direction where this is going to be valuable, and you want to get familiar with it. The other thing that can be a good idea is before you get too far down the road in your V-Ray setup, and some of you that I was working on your 220s, getting you set up for doing your renderings, I already did this. In your V-Ray options, you have the ability to save your settings. And if something were to crash or something were to get screwed up or you checked the wrong box or something like that, which happens, sometimes you didn't mean to check something and it happened. Sometimes V-Ray just decides it's not going to work anymore. It's good to save your options. So I have a good set of options right now. I like what's happening. So I'm going to click on this Save button. And in today's folder,
That's everything,
camera, shutter speed, backgrounds, everything, except for the network setups. The network's independent of it. I don't know why, but it's the one thing. The distributed rendering is separate. So I'm going to save this, and I'll say, what is this? This is 03/16/2016, Skyscraper, backup. And I'll go ahead and save. And that way I can come back and I can reload. If something happens and it's not working, I can come back and I can reload that file and just start where I left off. And so that's saved. To reload it, I would just click on this little load button, and then I can pick this VisOp setting and say open, and it'll reload all of the files. One of the ways of confirming that it reloads is if you leave a drawer open, doesn't matter which one, and you go to reload it, as soon as it reloads, it'll close all the drawers. So you can confirm that it did, in fact, reload it. So I know V-Ray is full of options and full of weirdness, and it takes a lot of getting used to. I'm trying to break these down into steps that you can really follow. Everything that I talked about today has written out tutorials for it, and the handout specifies which ones and what order I use them in. So for example, under Part 3, follow V-Ray 8.17 Sun to establish a physical sun. Follow that up with V-Ray 8.18 Sky to create the background sky. So everything that I talked about has a step-by-step that walks you through exactly what I did. Because I know sometimes there's these options that are hard to remember. Of course, I also publish the lectures on YouTube, and you can go back and watch and pause, which a lot of people do as they go through certain V-Ray options. Okay, so like I said, today is kind of a two-part thing. So I'm going to turn you guys loose to work on this and to try to set up your file. Meanwhile, I'm going to prep the 2 pieces of cardboard, and then I'll invite you to come over if you want to watch me actually do the cutting. Like I said, there are lab techs that are available to help you. They will probably do a better job than me because I don't laser cut as much as they do. They'll know what the settings are more than I will. I'll guess at them today. After I've cut them, I'll come back over and I'll assemble it in front of you so that you can see how it kind of goes together. So that'll probably end up being the last hour or so of class. So you have probably about a half hour to an hour right now to work on the V-Ray part, get a rendering, and post it, and then I'll go through how to glue it together. If you feel like you get how the stuff glues together or you really are comfortable with laser cutting, you don't have to follow me around. You don't have to watch me. This is more information for you. It also is available if you really would rather work on V-Ray. If you go to the digital tools site and you go to Physical Modeling 6.1 under Tutorials, right there is me gluing it together and getting glue all over everything.
So we don't have to follow you.
So you don't actually have to watch me do it today. It exists here. But if you want to see me do it, I'll do it.
You're going to cut it actually.
Yeah, I'll go cut it right now. So I'll do the whole thing. So if you want to watch me cut it, you can watch me cut it too. Yeah, I know. I'm going to ask somebody for glue, so I'm going to check the bottle this time first. Anyway. This would probably work if it's not dry. Yep, that'll work. So this will be the one, and I'm going to check to make sure it's attached. I know. I'm going to keep it. No, it's pretty funny if you watch at some point in here. Let's see where it.
Oh, there you go.
I think it's right here. At least it didn't go all over everything. No, not yet. I know.
Oh, there's
I have it all over my hand, so it has to be in here somewhere. Yeah, there you go. Lucky it didn't go all over there. There we go. Like, okay then. Anyway.
More like a cake.
Yeah. So sorry for the random tangents, right? Anyway, start your V-Ray.